Where the bombs drop and the blood does flow, and the cities are on fire, and the children are crying, 'cause the mothers all have died. Young man home from the war, searching for his love, but she tells him leave forever, a killer I'll never love. Where the bones lie, and the blood does flow, and the cities are on fire, and the children are crying, 'cause the mothers all have died. Where the devil's been buried, and the young have just been born, but the death laid all around us is dying for many more. Where the bombs drop, and the blood does flow, and the cities are on fire, and the children are crying, because their mothers all have died. That's the soldiers marching off the war, with their guns and their helmets and find the women, kill the children, but this war must go on. Where the bombs drop, and the blood does flow, and the cities are on fire, and the children are crying, 'cause the mothers all have died. Beneath around them, the lives are forgot like a wind, and the children of the children, just waiting for their fathers to go. Where the bombs drop, and the blood does flow, and the cities are on fire, and the children are crying, 'cause the mothers have all died.
From the beginning, he felt alienated from his surroundings. Home was a word that he could only attach an abstract definition to. There was certainly no feelings of warmth connected to it in his mind. It was to him no more than a place to go, as an animal that returns to his shelter. He took a great deal of pride in his present life. He felt a sense of regret that it was at an end. At no other time in his life did he ever feel anything like pride. If reasons are sought, perhaps this is one. The old environment quickly took away any sense of well-being he might have felt. Many things that he had forgotten now came back to him. Poverty and desperation don't leave the mind. Instead, they lie hidden, just waiting to be triggered into consciousness. And he felt the full measure of their sadness. Nothing had changed for the better. The neighborhood delinquents no longer ran the street on foot. Now the gang of troublemakers roamed the streets and highways on motorcycles. Even the slums were becoming mechanized. No, nothing had changed for the better. Resentment, hatred, and antagonism still prowled the streets of his neighborhood. And there wasn't any difference between it and the jungle. In both, only the strongest found existence to be bearable, and the only relief possible was to get even every chance you could, get even for the dirt and for the misery, slam your fist at the world and keep on slamming. He was an outsider now, and the resentment was directed against him. But now he was the strongest. As in the jungle, only the fittest can survive, and there is a sense of satisfaction in savagery. He had been away for 2 years, and 2 years is a long time to keep a memory alive. His girlfriend was named Marlene. He never analyzed his feelings for her. Perhaps he cared for her a great deal, and perhaps very little. This he did not know. But where he had been, you had to have a girl to think about and to talk about, and she fit the purpose nicely. Yes, it was nice to remember one thing that had worked out. He thought of how nice it would be to see her again. I'm going to see her first. Had postponed his having to go to his own home. No, nothing had changed for the better. He had nowhere else to go but to his home. Funny, but when you're thousands of miles away, home doesn't stink so strongly and the dirt is a little less noticeable. That's just a trick of memory. Foul people will always make their homes in foul places. As he had expected, there was no one waiting to tell him hello. He didn't care to see the woman his father lived with, but he would have liked to have seen his father. He had wired ahead that he was coming. It had cost $4 to do it, and he didn't know why he wasted the money. Perhaps because his two buddies had also sent telegrams home, and he thought they had expected him to. Perhaps he was disappointed, but he told himself that he would have known better. His father was a lush and would always be a lush. He had started to drink when he found out what his second wife was like. There was no changing her and no changing him. For as long as he could remember, he had never seen the place he lived in cleaned. The cat belonged to his stepmother, and he hated it almost as much as he hated her. The bitch had only married his father for what little insurance money his mother had left. And he hated her. He hated her so that he had gone away. But now he was back. stepmother was a tramp, and she had long ago made a mockery of her marriage. Jan was a bum. He had tried to tell his father that, but there was no talking him out of his luck. But since then his father had regretted it 100 times, because Jan never tried to hide her alley-cat morals. Instead, she flaunted them to the point of bringing other bums home with her. He did not know what awakened him. Later on, as he thought back, believed it might have been the premonition of what he was going to do. He could hear her voice and laughter, wicked laughter. Without seeing her, he could imagine what was going on. The thoughts that crossed his mind made him sick to his stomach. He had no control over his urge to kill her. Only physical restraint could have stopped him. He felt that if he destroyed her, it would eliminate what he felt inside. The enormity of what he had done began to weigh upon him. He had sat alone in his room for 2 hours. In that time, his mind had worked like a child. At first, he thought to hide the crime from his father, but he realized he could not. He left the house and had been wandering in a daze for 30 minutes. Reality became the past. Began to feel nauseated, and the nausea was the only firm grip he had on reality. Daylight had passed away into darkness several hours ago, but for one who has retreated into the world of the unreal, the clock advances unnoticed. He had walked the streets aimlessly and without purpose or destination. People, buildings, and objects had surrounded him, but it was as though they were in another dimension, one quite different from his own. He was jolted back to reality by what he saw. Like a child, he sought to drive his dark sadness away by seeking bright lights. His conscience no longer bothered him. He was no longer capable of distinguishing between right and wrong. one unreal world and enter another. The price is rather high, but you're able to watch the undulating movements of a young girl's breast as she sets about to shine her shoes. The world abounds with absurdities. Such absurdities were what his juvenile mind sought this night. He found distraction in the fal-de-ral around him. He had begun to drink, and the alcohol instilled in him a false sense of security, along with the melancholy gaiety. He now wanted to stop thinking. For murder is not an easy thing to bear in one's mind. No, he certainly did not want to think, and lust proved to be a better companion than conscience. It was not difficult for him to get the name of the prostitute. Where you find sin with a little effort, you can find more ways to sin. Her name was Marie, and for that matter, it could have been anything else. He was only interested in flesh, and Marie was not a person to him, only flesh. Lust does not always fulfill itself. He suddenly felt troubled, and perhaps this was the cause. The effects of the alcohol were wearing off, leaving a foul taste in his mouth. At what moment he decided to kill her could only be known to himself. Even less discernible for what reason. To look for reason in a madman's acts is folly. It is enough simply to label him a madman. The weapon of destruction was what he sought. The destruction of his soul was now complete. There remained only his physical self. He tried to escape the agony that ate at his insides through amusement. This was naive on his part because the damned cannot escape themselves. His agony was of his own making, and it was inseparable for him. The viciousness of his act had turned him into a beast, and it was fitting that he should move amongst other beasts. He sat for several hours, but to him they might have been seconds. The urge for self-destruction filled his every fiber, but he would leave the world as he had come into it, in protest. The urge for self-destruction was suddenly replaced by a terrifying, diabolical urge. It would have been better if he had never been born. He was in a hotel room and he was drunk. So drunk that he was able to stomach himself, something that would have been impossible for him to do earlier. did not wish to see were thrown into his conscious mind. Each brought with it an accusation. A grotesque nightmare of horror took control of him. But what he experienced was a small price to pay for what he had done. He forced himself to gain control, but to keep control he had to escape the workings of his tormented mind. Whiskey did this, even if for a short time only, when whiskey became his drug, his god. An animal will go to any length to get what he needs. An animal will prowl and stalk and finally devour its prey. And he was an animal, and the streets were his jungle. And ruthlessness, cunning, and hate filled his being. Girl that brought him here. Perhaps in it he sensed that she was one of his kind, or perhaps it was pure sexuality that motivated him, or urge to destroy. Perhaps all three, or perhaps none of these had led him to where he was. Sylvia was a strange girl, a modern young girl, part of the wild generation that grew up in a world filled with madness. They had lived too long in the shadow of destruction, until at last they accepted destruction as a way of life. Thrills were kicks, and to get thrills meant danger, and kicks meant salvation, a temporary salvation from reality. Nihilism was their only religion. They had turned away from all conventional beliefs. was a madman.